Hey guys, welcome to Acoustic Cinema, a brand new film and music podcast / vodcast brought to you by Loudstone TV. I am your co-host, Andrew Rivenbark, and I am joined by...
I'm Haley, and I am your other co-host. We
Yes.
are co-CEOs, or I like to call it a CE host.
CE host, I love that. You coined that right before we got on air. So this is the pilot episode of the show, and basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be breaking down some film that really talks about the music industry, and whether that's through the lens of the soundtrack of the film or whether it's a film that actually talks about the music industry, like this first film that we watched did. Now, I knew nothing about this film going in. Haley, do you want to tell them a little bit about it?
Okay, so this is a film that it's called Vox Lux is the name of the movie. I watched it on Hulu, and it is a 2018 American drama film written and directed by Brady Corbett from a story by both Corbett and Mona Fastfold, and it stars Natalie Portman, Jude Law, Raffi Cassidy, Stacey Martin, and Jennifer Ale. And this film is basically about the very dark and gritty sides of becoming a pop music sensation. But it's also so much more than that. And I went into this very blind. I really didn't know what kind of movie it was going to be until I started watching. So I got some thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts too. So if you are listening to the show and you're contemplating, by the time we get to the end of this episode, watching this movie, the one thing I'm going to recommend is not doing so in a public space, because I was sitting at Starbucks and I had it on my phone. I had my AirPods in, so everything was fine. But that first scene literally made me jump out of my seat. So the film opens with sort of like a narration. So we forgot to mention one of the pivotal cast members is the narrator, Willem Dafoe.
Yes.
I recognize the voice instantly. He's got a great, creepy voice. And he starts talking about a girl named Celeste. And we see some home movie footage. And the first 5 minutes are very sort of haunting and eerie. Lots of dark lit scenes. And it was kind of I don't know if it was the prologue, I guess, because the film was broken up into 4 parts. I think it was the prologue, Act 1, Act 2, and then the finale. So this was the prologue, which took place in 1999. And it was just a lot of wide, dark, static shots of a car. And you just okay, what's going on with this car?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just start to see it cuts to daytime. All these kids are coming back from, I guess, Christmas break. And they're shuffling into their music class, and it just kind of seemed very dull and boring at first, but you knew something was up because of the eerie music.
Yes, it starts off with a lot of strings, and it felt very, just even the way that it was shot, it felt very dated. There was a quality to it that it seemed like it could have been filmed in the 90s and released in the 90s. And I don't know if that was intentional. It probably was.
I feel like it has to be with stuff like that. The whole film sort of had an indie vibe to me. It felt very an independent film, and I'm not sure if it was. I didn't really recognize a ton of the production studios. You know how they list those off before the opening credits, before you get the title of the movie. I didn't really recognize those production studios, so it could have been an indie film.
Right.
But yeah, it was a very dated vibe. And then you just get this scene of this student who walks into class, and the teacher's looking at him all confused. He introduces himself as Cullen, I think his name was. And the teacher's like, yeah, I know. And then the shot that made me jump was a literal shot. It was a gunshot from the kid, and he just
Yep.
like killed the teacher. And it was the way that it was staged, I think, was the most powerful part of this scene, because all you're seeing is the back of the student's head.
Yeah.
You don't see his face, what he's doing, or why this teacher looks so confused. And then, bam, she gets shot and she falls to the floor.
Right. And I had a feeling something was up at the when we were kind of following this kid, just creepily walking into the school for a little while. He looked like he was about to. He looked like a school shooter, you know, like he had
Yeah.
that school shooter to him,
Mhm.
and it was jarring. Like I watched this at home today with surround sound,
Oh,
and that part I was like, oh snap,
yeah.
it's this kind of movie. And I texted Andrew and I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're this is what we're walking into, okay. And
Yeah.
then shortly after that, we're introduced to our main character, Celeste, and she is, just a girl in the class. And she, like, the rest of the students are freaking out, and they all like run to the back of the class, and she's just sitting there, like, as if she's in shock, because, like, of course you'd be in shock. You just watch someone like shoot and kill your teacher, and then the shooter said to her, like, he addressed her directly, and he was like, Celeste, go to the back of the class, like, as if they knew each other. And I was wondering if the shooter, like, if we were going to go back in time and see like a friendship or something, or like maybe a budding romance. I'm not sure. And that didn't happen.
Mhm.
The shooter like killed himself shortly after, 'cause she did go to the back of the class, and that is the catalyst that kind of begins this girl's journey into the music industry. So
Well, you forgot the important detail. Before he shoots in himself, we see, like, or actually we don't see, we just hear, because the camera's on Celeste the whole time. And then she says, let them all go. I'll stay and I'll pray with you. And then you just hear gunshots.
that's right. Yeah.
And he shoots Celeste. She doesn't die. She gets a really serious spinal injury. But the rest of the class dies, and then he kills himself, and the cops find him shortly later. But yeah, she gets saved, and that sort of jumpstarts her, as you said, music career. In a very roundabout way. We see her recovering in the hotel room and in the aquatic pool for therapy. And, she's with what we assume at this point is her sister, Ellie. And Ellie has like one of those like digital Casio keyboards, like the old school ones that every, I think, grandparent has lying around their house for their grandkids. And Ellie's trying to teach her a melody and how to play certain parts on the keyboard. And I'm just like, okay, maybe she's interested in music and trying to figure out how to sing. She wants to learn how to sing. And we get to a vigil later, a candlelight vigil, where she goes and she's asked to speak, but she doesn't quite know how to say what her feelings are. So we find out that the song that she's learning in the hospital room is a song that she wrote to help sort of express her feelings, which is recorded. And even though it was like the 90s, it basically, goes viral, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it was actually, I think it was the year 2000. So things were like,
okay.
Y2K, people had like handheld camcorders, and the internet was a thing. It wasn't like widely used as nearly as much, but people, still got famous from, like, it was like the very dawn of the viral video, I think.
Yeah. And then through narration, we learn that, she does sort of get famous from this. And Willem Dafoe's narrator mentions that, a producer later tells her to change one of the words of the song, and it sort of becomes the anthem of like America, of the American people. And it's not just her suffering, it's their collective suffering. And I don't know if we do a little bit of a time jump, because that from right after she gets shot, and we get into her recovery and the vigil, that sort of starts Act 1, which is that 2001 time frame. So we're somewhere within that beginning stages still, but we start to see her get involved with a producer, going to all these different meetings and things like that. And the producer is Jude Law, who is really good at playing like a creepy, like jerk face character.
Yeah, he is a little too good at it. But I
Right.
think in this case, I felt like he didn't come across to me as creepy, just douchey.
Okay.
Like there was a part in the movie where he did seem a little creepy, and that was when she goes to one of her first recording. She goes to a recording studio and she's recording her song, and then he like kind of talks to her very, very closely.
Super close.
Like
Yeah.
super close. Like it's like in a hallway, and I'm
Yeah.
like, please don't. Like, please don't do anything. This poor
Right.
girl.
She's 14. Like
Yeah. And you see her like start to lose her innocence just
Mhm.
from doing all these things. Like she goes to like learn how to dance all sexy in this like,
Yeah.
dance class. And then he takes the girls to Stockholm.
hmm
And that's, I think, when the movie starts to turn into like, that's I think when it starts to develop its themes.
Yeah.
Like that's when, it's about loss of innocence. It's about growing up too fast. Because then she like meets this guy when she's there and they have a one-night stand. We find out later in the movie that that she actually gives birth to a
Right.
little girl from that interaction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think that's even mentioned in the narration at one point where he says, were it not for the trip to Stockholm where they're sort of going and they don't have parental supervision and the producer just sort of lets them do whatever. This whole time, Celeste and Ellie are joined at the hip.
mhm.
So Ellie, as the older sister, is taking her younger sister everywhere, that she wants to go, which includes the clubs, so there's probably some drinking, there's probably some drugs.
Yep.
There's probably a lot of stuff that she's exposed to that were it not for her music, she wouldn't have been exposed to initially. But I do like, I want to double back real quick to Jude Law's character, because you see in that recording studio scene and also in the following scene where they go to sort of like that marketing, like brand manager woman, he sort of gets very controlling of
Yes.
Celeste as an artist. And I think that's very common. I'm sure there's tons of stories. There have been tons of stories that you see from real life artists.
Oh yeah.
Like Disney stars come to
Yeah.
mind. Their lives are very controlled and very structured.
That was exactly my thought. Well, I thought this character sort of became a composite of like Britney, Demi Lovato. I thought of Miley, all
Yeah.
these pop sensations that got their start very, very young. And it kind of, that they all went through a phase where it kind of messed them up for a little while.
Yeah. Did you watch the Demi Lovato documentary on YouTube?
Oh my God, I did.
Did you cry? Because my
Ooh,
wife cried.
baby. It was heavy. I did not know.
Yeah.
I did not know that they went through that. By the way, they came out as non-binary today, so they are using they them pronouns now.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's news that I read. I was like, oh, neat. Okay, I guess Demi's a them now. Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it was so jarring. Like they talked about their sexual assault at like 15. They talked about the drug use and the eating disorder that they had. It was a lot. Like I did not know that they went through nearly that much. Like, and the people, their support system too, like their sisters and their friends. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was a very heavy, very visceral documentary.
Entirely. Yeah.
It was almost, I had to watch something lighthearted afterwards just because of how intense it made me feel.
Oh my God. It was just every single episode, I think, touched on something worse. Like, how do you get worse? I don't know how you go.
Than a drug overdose that almost kills you.
And like they did die, right? For like a few minutes and then they came back.
Probably,
like
if they didn't, they came pretty close.
Right.
Like, yeah, about as close as you could get, I'd imagine. But yeah, I would agree that this part of the film sort of felt like a composite of that, sort of like a I don't want to say satirized version of it, but it it was dramatized for the sake of the film.
Yeah.
And I actually thought that the scene after the rock club with the heavy metal rocker whose name I forget, I think Dan was his name.
Whoever the guy that she met in Sweden.
Yeah, I think like I thought that was going to turn into sort of a sexual assault scene, and I was like, I was not ready for it. I'm like, please don't let it be that. Please don't let it be that.
That's a good point. Like, I feel like this movie is a lot of vignettes of this person's life, and like you think it's going to lead somewhere, and then it subverts your expectations, and it goes in a different direction, and then so you see her loss of innocence, and then it jumps ahead like 15 years, and then she's a full adult, and that's when Natalie
Portman,
played by Natalie Portman, whose performance was interesting, I think.
Yeah, and I had a really hard time with this film, honestly, connecting from the young girl who plays Celeste into the adult version that we see.
It was like two different characters.
Yeah,
it was weird.
I understand that it's supposed to be a more jaded version of the character who's, been through the ringer and has just experienced more and more. Because if the entire rest of the life, it was a huge time jump, like you said, 15 years. If the entirety of those 15 years were anything like the handful of moments that we saw as she's just starting out her career, she's probably going to wind up pretty messed up.
Right.
So, and we start to see that sort of like in the span of an afternoon into an evening, we see how messed up this character actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting to watch, I think, because her pop persona, and by the way, we kind of talk on the visual metaphors here. The entire movie, she wears a like stylized neck brace. It looks like it's basically a choker, but that's because she was shot, I think, right near the neck.
She was shot in the neck, yeah.
Right. So she had to wear a neck brace, and that kind of just became a staple of like her pop star identity. And you see, glitter and sequins, all like the pop star tropes. It feels very early 2000s, but I think it's supposed to take place in 2017, like present day-ish. So it was interesting kind of seeing that consistency of her pop persona and how it's, affected not only her life, but also her fan base and the people around her. And she's like known as this entity.
Yeah. And I think too, speaking of pop persona and the pop tropes, I think another thing that I just kind of picked up on that I didn't realize I was picking up on until just now, actually, the song that sort of catapults her into stardom is this sweet, beautiful ballad of pretty much the worst day of her life, and how she's trying to figure out how to cope with that, but she's going to try to do that through this beautiful song that she's written. And she even makes a comment too that it doesn't matter, now that she's getting ready to release her 6th studio album, which she says when she's being interviewed by the press is sci-fi anthems, I think is how she described the album.
Yeah.
Like there's a serious disconnect of how you get from this beautiful ballad that she wrote to sci-fi anthems, but then you sort of realize, it's the producers, really.
Entirely.
It doesn't matter how good you I forget exactly what the quote was, but she said, like, it doesn't matter how good you are. Everything is brand at this point. She's a character for a voice character for a video game, and she does a bunch of other stuff, and she makes more money in an afternoon than she makes for a full year on tour. But
people hire her for her image, not for her music.
Yeah, and that's all it is. And so, and again, you can parallel that with real life. You have like
Yep.
the Lady Gagas, who,
Hmm.
if you've ever seen like actual performance footage of her when she was attending university in New York, a completely different person than when she broke out on the scene as Lady Gaga, wearing like meat dresses and
Right.
bubble dresses and things like that.
Right. Because that was her brand, and people were taken aback when she like stepped away from that in recent years.
Mhm.
Like a lot of people, it became just she was the weird, confident, queer, like, sexual lady, and
Yeah.
there was something alien about her. And I think, that plus the fact that she's an excellent vocalist and a really good songwriter and musician, that kind of made her who she was. I think, like, that more toned down version of herself that she is now works because she had to go through that like pop star big meat dress phase.
Yeah. The meat dress. I still can't get over that all these years later.
It's like, it's so crazy. People still talk about it. And like I'm a little monster. Like I love Gaga, and I love her more recent stuff. I
Yeah.
love her old stuff, but I like the toned down, more like real version that we've gotten from her. And actually, it's funny. I wanted to mention this a few minutes ago, but in terms of like a pop star branding, like that's kind of like what her character goes through in that movie that she did with Bradley Cooper, A Star Is Born.
Yeah.
Like that's what they did. Like she was just this small town nobody, and she sang with him one day, and then the industry turned her into a pop sensation. They changed her hair, they changed her clothes, they changed her, the way that she presented herself. And
Yeah.
so much of the music industry is about presentation and the ability to perform and theatricality.
Yeah. And honestly, it's funny that you bring up Star is Born, one, because I'm going to go into a little segue here about that film. When Hannah and I were leaving for our honeymoon, Hannah's my wife. As we were leaving, we were going to Hawaii, so it's an 8-hour flight from our first layover in Dallas to Maui, where we landed, and we were going out of our mind crazy because the Wi-Fi on planes is terrible unless you like pay for it. But
Right.
this flight had all these like in-flight movies that you could watch, and each chair had a different screen, so you could watch, and everybody could watch whatever they wanted to. So she decides that she's going to watch A Star Is Born. She's like, and remember, she never watches movies or TV or anything. But she decided, well, I'm not going anywhere, so I might as well watch this film. And I forget what I was watching. I think I was watching like a stupid comedy. I can't remember. But she turns the film off afterwards, and she just like turns to me and with tears in her eyes, and she's like, I didn't know about the ending. and she was like not terrified, but she was like very anxious about the plane ride already to begin with, and then add in the fact that she watched like a tearjerker of a movie and she had no idea about the ending. She was just like, why didn't anybody tell me this was so bad? Why'd you let me watch this?
That's hilarious. I feel like I have been in her shoes because for some reason, whenever I watch movies on planes, I always watch the tearjerkers.
Right.
Like I watched The Notebook for the first time when I was on a plane, and I watched Gravity for the first time while flying. Okay. I watched like the Mount Everest movie where like a bunch of people died.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it about planes? Because I watched that James Franco movie, 127 Hours.
Oh, that movie's good.
Yeah, I had to turn it off because it was also the first time that I drank on a plane, and the two did not mix.
No.
Because I actually met, so that movie's based on a real life person, Aaron Ralston, I think his name is, and I actually met him in real life.
Oh wow!
I was at a conference in college in Kansas City, and he was there. He had just written a book. So he was talking about the book. He was showing us pictures from the day, which was very disturbing. So I got the opportunity to meet him, and then the movie with James Franco came out, and I was on a plane and I decided to watch it. And like I said, I had been drinking, and I was just like, I need to turn this off, otherwise I'm going to be making a mad dash to the
Yeah.
bathroom.
Yeah. Well, it gets so graphic and like,
Yeah,
like you follow it's just him like the whole movie. Like I
yeah,
think that he's like the only character. And so,
yeah, pretty
it was
much.
my first, like I think it was the first time I saw James Franco in that kind of role too.
Hmm.
So, and it came out like a while ago, like I want to say in like 2008 or something.
Yeah, it's old. I can't remember, but yeah, I also watched Black Swan for the first time on an
Oh
airplane, and
yeah.
what's really funny about that too, to kind of bring it back in,
Yeah.
because it's another Natalie Portman film,
Mhm.
um, another weird Natalie Portman film, but
Yes.
but when we got initially pitched the concept for this podcast, and AJ had us watch Vox Lux,
Mhm.
in my head, before he even said anything, I was like, Black Swan. Like, it was just, it's not about the music industry. It's about, it's about ballet, but it's the same
Yeah.
sort of like, uh, they're kind of like the rock stars of the ballerina world, I guess. If you would, if you're performing Swan Lake, I guess you have to be.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen the film, but like that movie's trippy and crazy and weird, and I felt like I definitely noticed some parallels between that and
Right.
Vox Lux.
I did too, now that you mention it, because that movie, Black Swan, is all about like, what do you do for your art? Like,
Mhm.
everything that you do is for your art. And that's kind of what Natalie Portman's character in Black Swan goes through. It's everything she does. And she gets a lot of, pressure from her mom to perform. And I think it's so much like of her just wanting to be this perfect ballet dancer. It's we should talk about Black Swan in a different episode. Like that's an amazing film, and like I think there are a lot of parallels between the two characters, because I think I like Natalie Portman better in Black Swan than I did in this. In this, I felt like she played more of a caricature of a washed up celebrity than
Yes.
an actual person, like she like put on like this thick like Staten Island accent. And it's like people from Staten Island, like they just for the most part speak pretty average, average
Right.
American accent. But
Yeah, it was bizarre. Yeah, because I had trouble finding that accent in young Celeste's character. So I'm like,
yeah,
where did this come from?
I know.
It was
And
a very bizarre choice.
I think the actress that plays young Celeste was British too, so I think I heard a little bit of like British tongue
Okay.
come in and out.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I thought I caught that too. That's why I was trying to figure out when she was younger. I'm like, wait, where is she from?
yeah,
But
yeah.
even Jude Law's dialect changed in Act Two of the film, and I'm not quite sure what it was meant to be, but it was really bizarre. It was weird.
Is that what happens when you age? You just develop an accent?
Are you saying I'm old?
No, oh my
Or
God.
are you just posing the question?
I'm posing the question.
Oh,
I mean,
okay, I got
you, like not you, Andrew, just you
Oh,
as
okay.
in, the vague term.
Gotcha.
Does one develop an accent when they age?
Maybe, who knows?
Am I gonna like one day turn 80 and then I'll start talking like this?
Oh,
I'll start talking like a newsie. I'll start talking like my grandpa. I'll start asking for coffee and
There you go.
take the dog for a walk.
That's funny. Yeah, and so like this second act, like I said before, I had a really hard time sort of pairing the new Celeste that we see with the old Celeste. And,
Yeah.
There's even like the disconnect with her sister that we see.
That was weird. Like, yeah, I felt like, they were alluding to the fact that they had gone through some sort of a rift during their relationship, but like they were so close at the beginning. Like they were like a partnership. They wrote songs together and they went places together.
Yeah, I'm wondering too, like how much of the film, if any of it, had to be reduced for, budget, time, something like that, because we get that moment where Celeste has the one night stand,
Hmm.
and then she just barges into her sister's hotel room, and we see the sister has slept with Jude Law's character. And
Yes.
I think that was sort of the catalyst for the falling out, but it was told over narration. So we didn't really get
Yeah.
to see the falling out or the fight or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, and then, later in the film, we get Natalie Portman's character getting high with Jude Law and saying, you can have sex with me while we're high. Like,
Yeah.
so that was a bit weird. But then to backtrack it to where she barges in to her sister's hotel room, she says, we need to call mom and dad. A plane flew into a building in New York.
Hmm.
Um, so it's right around the time of 9/11. But what we don't see is any sort of like personal, uh, cause and effect from that.
Yeah. It was like
We,
I kind of thought, not to cut you off, I kind of thought
That's
at
fine.
some point, since they talked about like, that this period of time took place between 2000 and 2001, and they also showed a shot of the New York City skyline
Mhm.
with the Twin Towers in full display. I thought they were going to touch on that at some point, and that was going to be another catalyst for her to write more music. That was going to be another
Right.
thing. And I think that's another theme of the movie is like writing music or finding art through tragedy.
Yes.
And it made me think of bands like MCR, which was started after 9/11, and they,
Mhm.
wrote a lot of their very emo, angsty music because of this horrible disaster. And then they became like one of the greatest emo pop punk bands of all time.
Yes, absolutely.
My young self, my young I would have straightened bangs with like curly hair. I was like a emo kid on the inside, but like on the
Okay.
outside, I posed as like the kind of kid that listens to the Jonas Brothers, which I also did. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
they're
Yeah,
great.
I'm the same way. I did straighten my hair one time in college, and it was just, for shiggles because I had grown it out and I just wanted to see what it looked like straight, and it was not a good look.
Fantastic.
But
Well,
I did look like I belonged in a pop punk band.
that was the look. Everybody did that. Like, and it was very like pin straight too. And everybody had like those
Mhm.
weird angles
Yep.
and like the super thick eyeliner. That was like a trend. But
Yeah, the
like,
only time I wore eyeliner though was on stage for theatrical productions. So,
of course. Yes. You got to
right.
make those eye pop
Yeah.
people back.
Yeah, of course. Of course. But yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned art through tragedy, because that was
Hmm.
another sort of note that I had written as well. And we sort of see that these artists that want to break into the industry, whether they're just starting out or they're getting a little bit of traction or whatever, they want to do it because they want to make music that impacts people. They want to um, sort of communicate feelings
Yeah.
that they're having to others and have those people be touched and share it, and just, have a really, again, not to overuse the word, but like a very visceral connection to their music.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
what we see in the film and what winds up being all too true that we start to learn in, the Demi documentary, the Taylor documentary, like all these
Yes.
different documentaries, is that they
Yes.
just become an image, and they have to do whatever the producer tells them, especially for young girls, which is a real shame. Um,
Hmm.
so you see that these artists go into the industry wanting to do one thing, and then the labels, the managers, the producers, heck, even the radio stations, they have them, just they turn them into ponies, ponies that they
Yeah.
trot around the center ring.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
And it's very heartbreaking, and I think there's two
Hmm.
lenses you can look at it through. You could look at it as like the cynical viewpoint of, oh, they let the fame and the fortune and all that go to their heads. They burnt out on drugs and alcohol and all this other, they're washed up, what happened to them? But then you can also look at it through the lens of, my heart breaks for these people because all they want to do is make music that affects people and elicits change. And they're being told essentially, no, do what we tell you, or you'll never work a day in your life. you know,
Hmm.
and it's heartbreaking.
Oh my God, it's so heartbreaking. And I think something else that I wanted to touch on, um, some like semi-related to that point. I was reading a review in the New Yorker on the film, and it talked about uh, the the fact that your brand is a part of your musical identity, and it talked about music through tragedy. It talked about like basically everything that we are talking about in this pod. And I want to read a little quote from that. It says. Yet Celeste's gift is a paradoxical one. It's empathetic but impersonal, a connection that's more of a matter of impulse and desire, and that's subject to a similar volatility, instability. It remains ultimately all about her. And that's something interesting too, is that even from the very beginning of the film, like when the school shooter comes in, she is different. She doesn't run to the back like all of her classmates. She tries to reason with the shooter. She tries to talk to him. And that's before we even, get a hint of her musical talent. And I guess that's another question for you. Do you think she has musical talent?
I liked the so let me counter this by asking, is it the actual actresses singing? Do we know?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is actually the actress is singing. I feel like if it wasn't, it would have sounded better. Like
Okay.
not to be blunt, but that's I feel like it sounded like she was fine, but then when they like really produced and overproduced the sound, that's when it became like big. Like there wasn't anything like super special about her voice. Like I've heard 13-year-olds sing on like America's Got Talent and stuff, and
Right.
I think they sound better than the actress did in this movie. But she was a great actress, just
Yeah. Yeah, I was not entirely blown away by the vocal performances of either actress. I did enjoy the first time we hear Celeste sing, and I think that's just because I'm a sucker for piano ballads.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I mean, that one drew me in, I think, more than the rest of the songs, but I don't know if that was by design. You're sort of captivated by the piano and by the lyrics that she's singing. And then it becomes overproduced, auto-tuned, generic shuffle pop or sci-fi pop as as we get to her sixth studio album,
Right.
and the title of the film. So yeah, I think that might have been by design.
I think it was. I think that's exactly what it was, because so many singers, like I thought of like young Britney, because when she was first starting out, like she had a good voice, but it wasn't amazing. And so what made her Britney was the fact that they produced her. They taught her that choreography. She had an incredible stage presence. She became a sex symbol. She, it was all about the performance. It was all about the brand and the vision. And that's what caught on to people. It wasn't her vocals. It was everything else. And I think a lot of musicians these days can get pretty big and pretty famous without being strong singers because of their theatricality.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very, the attention span in America and all over the world really has sort of changed. And it's, I mean, they wrote a song about it. Video killed the radio star, right? Like we've gone from an audio society to a visual society. We need to like be visually stimulated by things. We don't really care as much about the audio. Now, what I am learning, and what we're fortunate enough to be doing with the podcast, is that podcasts are sort of making a resurgence. They're growing. Where I think we're returning to this. We'll call it the post Joe Rogan era, if you will, who records and releases 3-hour long podcasts that people actually listen to in their entirety.
Yeah.
So I think we are starting to see sort of a paradigm shift in terms of the attention span, but I think um, this movie highlights perfectly like that time frame in America where like we have shorter attention spans. We'd rather be visually stimulated than
Right.
made to think or made to uh, articulate anything, and we just are mindless drones.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really a very poignant point that you make. Like, it's this character, you see her just take a hold of this identity that they sculpt for her.
Mhm.
And then I feel like by the time she becomes Natalie Portman, whoever she was at the beginning is gone. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing to me that is anything like that girl at the beginning. Like it's yeah, that was, I don't know how I feel about that.
I think, for the most part, I agree with you, but I am going to make you think about one scene, and it's after her and Jude Law get high on
Hmm.
whatever it is they're doing in the hotel room, and she's basically so drugged up that she can't walk straight or even stand straight to get to her
Yeah.
show,
And she
right?
collapses.
Yeah, she collapses. He sort of chuckles, and then they're like babying her and trying to get her ready for the show. And
Yeah.
on the way to the show, she just has this moment where she runs out of the van that they're in. She tells them pull over, stop the car. She runs out, and um, for a second, I thought that they were like going to be driving past like a cemetery, and she was going to go to like the shooter's grave or something.
Right.
But what we see is that it just winds up being a beach. And her daughter goes with her. You know, we're introduced to her 15-year-old daughter. Um,
Who's played by the same actress as the younger version of her, by the way.
oh, really? Oh,
Uh-huh.
okay. Totally didn't pick up on that. um,
So I was confused when she came back. I was like, wait a minute.
that's so funny.
What timeline is this?
That's pretty funny. But yeah, so they both walk out, and you just see that they're on the beach, and Celeste sort of gets down on her knees and says, just come down here with me. Just sit and close your eyes, and let's just keep in our hearts, everybody who's suffering right now. And like they just
Yeah.
have like a little moment of silence and prayer. And I think that is one moment where we see young Celeste shine through. Granted, in a very drug-ridden state, but that's one moment where we see her sort of shine through and break through. So it kind of gives you like a little, all right, maybe she's still in there a little bit.
That's a good point. Yeah, that was a nice scene too. I feel like the movie is trying really hard to have all of these intense themes and talk about all these metaphors about the music industry and how dark it is, and also like about taking a tragedy and making art out of it, that it forgets about the actual relationships.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
find that?
Yeah, I felt that it was very. You used a great word earlier, and it was vignettes. It's a film full of vignettes that I felt had a very sort of disjointed story, to where
Yeah.
when it got to the end, this fourth part, the finale, which is just her concert, and honestly, it went on for far too long for me.
There were also it was a lot of like flashy stuff. It was like
Yeah.
you saw they showed a fan in the audience at one point that had a bunch of like things all over her face, like
Yeah, it was like, I think it was meant to be shot sort of like these concert documentaries that come out.
Yeah.
I think it was meant to be shot like that, but it didn't do it for me. And by the time, they had this scene, and Willem Dafoe's character talking about how Celeste had said to her sister at one point that she did die, and when she died she met the devil, and sold her soul to the devil to come back with a voice and a message that she could carry across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
And then they show a shot of her sister and her daughter in the audience, and I had a very hard time following what the point of that scene was, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I felt like it was like it came to it. I forget how to speak. To me, it seemed like it was trying to be really deep, but it came off as a little pretentious. Like
Yes.
the movie kind of was trying really hard to hammer in these very deep themes and like, you know, look at this person, look at her life. Man, celebrities really got it bad. Like, you know, I think that's sort of what we were trying to do. But yeah, that was a weird quote because I felt like I felt the same. I felt like the vignettes were really disconnected. And
Yeah.
I think, you know, I had read some reviews after I watched, and critics seem to kind of have the same sentiment. Like it has a 61% on Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't like
Yeah.
awful, but it's not great.
Yeah. Well, the audience score is 38. So
Oh,
the
audiences did not like this.
the audience was feeling some type of way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you because that's one thing I do over on Podflix and Chills. I tend to check out what the different ratings are.
Yeah,
for
nice.
the shows that I review. So yeah, IMDb had 5.9 out of 10. Now, when I checked Rotten Tomatoes this afternoon, it was 62%. So if you looked in it at 61,
my mistake.
No, I'm just saying, like I've seen it change. Like I've gone on one day and have it be one number, and then gone on another day to double check and have it be a completely different number. So it's very possible that somebody watched the movie between the time I looked this morning and the time you looked and like thumbs downed it or something.
That's
it's
true.
entirely possible.
That's very true. Yeah. I'll be honest. I like, you know, read that it was 61% on Wikipedia. So this could be, so this, you know, whoever wrote that this could have been an older article. Yeah. So you're probably right since you looked at it earlier today.
It's all good. But yeah, I would probably tend to agree with that rating though. I'd probably like drop it somewhere in the middle because like I do think there were some messages that could have landed a little bit better. I think the intent of the film was there. Like I said before, I just think it makes me wonder. I'll probably wind up doing research just to see like if you know, if they had to cut anything due to time or budget or anything.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure that there were scenes like that probably would have gotten more insight with the characters and the relationships. I think the movie as a whole probably would have worked better if we didn't see the time jump, and if we just followed this girl, you know, through the fame, and we actually saw the relationships develop and deteriorate, and saw her like, instead of the narration saying, oh, this guy knocked her up, actually seeing her like take a pregnancy test and like have this baby. And, you know, because we also learned that her daughter is being raised mainly by her sister.
Right.
And so that's probably what caused this rift in the relationship, because she didn't feel like she was a fit mother since she was trying to be a pop star.
Yeah.
And also a child.
Right.
Like teen pregnancy is one thing, but also being a teenager thrust into immense fame and popularity is a whole other thing. So doing both those things at the same time, whoo baby, that's a ride.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. And one thing that I didn't look into before recording this episode, but I'm sort of actually curious. At the opening credits, did you happen to notice who executive produced the film?
I did see that it was, I think Natalie Portman produced it, and then Sia also produced it.
Sia, yeah.
Did she executive produce it?
Yeah, she was one of the EPs on it, and it makes me sort of wonder, like, how much of a sort of influence she had on the film, or if it sort of relates, because I don't know too much about Sia, and not that I don't think anybody really knows that much about Sia, because you know she wears that Cruella de Vil wig everywhere she goes.
That's true. There's been some stuff about her recently.
Okay.
So there was this movie that she directed called Music, and it starred Maddie Ziegler and Leslie Odom Jr. and Kate Hudson. And Sia had met Maddie Ziegler when she was on Dance Moms, and she kind of like took her under her wing and became like another mother figure towards her. And so this movie was like universally panned for being just like problematic out the wazoo, because it was about this child with autism whose name is Music, and it's just portrayed in a really disrespectful way. And the autistic community was really upset because they cast a neurotypical person, Maddie, as this autistic kid. And not only that, but she was portrayed in this like very, stereotypical way. And also the story was weak and weird. And a lot of autistic people have talked in great depth about how offended they were by this. So I don't think there's a lot of huge fans of Sia as a creator at the moment. Like, I think she's an excellent songwriter, and I think that's where she should stay. I don't think she should foray further into film.
Yeah. So when did that film come out?
That came out like last year. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was watching all of these like YouTube video essays from autistic creators about how upsetting it was to them that they didn't even consider to cast an autistic person in this role. And then Sia got really defensive about it. And she she just didn't consult the right people. And I think she had good intentions behind it, but to make something she wanted it to be a love letter to that community, and that was not it. And
not
she just went
off. Yeah.
No, it came off like offensive and cruel. And anyway, I like Sia's music, and she's done a really great job in writing songs and working with artists. I think she, not in addition to like her own stuff, I did some research on her a little while back. I know she's done a lot with producing other artists' music and helping to write a lot of songs. But I thought it was interesting that she had a part in producing this film. And yeah, I do wonder if like she had any say in how it was written or how it was portrayed, or like, and if any of the dialogue was written by her. I don't know. Like, I feel like when you're an EP of a movie, like you're, kind of on the sidelines. You're like just the person that oversees a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Puts money into it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And then you brought up something else that I sort of, it ties back into the story of the film. And I did think while I was watching, but it's just sort of like a general question for real life, I guess. And that would be, is it easy for you to like disassociate different parts of people into like the different roles that they have to play? For example, with Sia, as you mentioned, she's great with songwriting. She does great in that style, that community, but maybe stay away from the film aspect of it. And I was starting to think about that, like with Celeste, like, can you sort of like, should you, one, and then two, how easy is it to sort of separate those two versions of herself that she portrays? Because we see her interact with her daughter as very like motherly, and she wants to know what's going on with her, and she wants to have this relationship with her. And she's like breaks down in the diner crying when her daughter says like that she can't really talk to her, and that she kind of like hurts her or whatever the line was. But then a split second later, you see her flip out on the diner owner for asking for a picture. I mean, to be honest, I was kind of on her side. Like, dude, she's crying. Like, you really going to ask her for a picture right now?
Right.
Like, you should back off a little bit. But yeah, she did kind of go a little over the top in her reaction. So like, one, should you disassociate that? Like, should you separate those halves of people? And two, like, how easy would it be to do so?
That's a really good question. And I think generally I am for separating the art from the artist. I think you are not your art until you make yourself your art. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you're in that type of celebrity where you are so big, and these days celebrities are expected to do so many things too. Like I feel like you can't just be a musician. You also have to be a voice actor, and you also have to be, a movie star, and you also have to have like a fashion line, and you have to have a perfume and a makeup. You have to do all of these things to like, stay relevant and stay active. And so I think it's got to be a challenge to maintain these different parts of yourself, but it's also probably keeping you on your toes, you know? Like, I'm a pretty multi-passionate person. Like, there's a lot that I like to do, and there's a lot that I present myself as, like, professionally. Like, I am a TV producer, but I also, come from a news background, but I also sing, and I also like to do theater and improv and comedy, and I like to paint. And so these are all just parts of myself, and like there isn't really one of them that makes me more of me than another part. And I feel like for a celebrity, just because they wear all of these hats and they do all of these things, it doesn't make them less of what they set out to do in the first place, you know?
Yeah. I would tend to agree with that. Yeah, it is, as you said, until your art becomes you and you sort of lose sight of yourself and why you started doing the art, whatever that is. It could be one art, it could be 10 arts, it could be, 5.
Yeah.
It's you have to sort of disassociate it, because as we've come to see, and again, it sort of comes full circle because it's what this movie touches on, and I know we've touched on it multiple times tonight, but it's the, there's a brand image that sort of is just unspoken. It's an unspoken agreement. You get into the limelight, like you're sort of locked into this, whatever image they want created for you. I always think of the Disney movie The Kid with Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
And Spencer Breslin, and Bruce Willis's character was an image consultant. So he literally goes around telling people how you're going to look, how you're going to dress, how you're going to talk, how you're going to act, all these things. And that is very much a real thing that people have to go through. Not necessarily even in the spotlight either. It can be in a number of different roles.
Oh, sure. Like beauty standards change all the time. I watch a lot of videos on like fashion trends and on like, the Gen Z versus millennial war with like, oh, should we wear skinny jeans? Should we wear wide set jeans?
Acid wash mom jeans.
Yeah. Should we have a side part? Should we part in the middle? God, I'm like a millennial. So I'm officially like a boomer.
Yeah, right. Oh, my 7-year-old niece said "Okay, boomer" to me like a month ago. I'm like, what? First of all, where'd you hear that? Second of all, I am not a boomer. You take that back.
That's kids these days.
I know, right?
These gosh darn kids. They say the darndest things.
They do.
Man, I really am a boomer. I'm going to be the kind of old person that like stands outside and like, get off my lawn. Waves my fist in the air.
That's awesome. Oh man, I would love to see that.
Let's stay friends for like 70 years and then you'll see it.
Absolutely. Definitely. Okay. Perfect. Deal.
Deal.
Awesome. So is there anything else you want to touch on with Vox Lux? Because I think we're coming up to the hour mark. So I want to sort of not push it too long. Because as you can see, the lighting in my home office is just great right now. We're doing some.
It's fine.
No, I know that. That's because I have a giant 27-inch computer monitor in my face that's lighting me.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, but
I have a ring light because I'm fancy like that.
See, I have one. It's in my closet. We're going through some transition stuff since we got back home from vacation. So like we're turning the old bedroom into our office space, and then we're moving all of our bed stuff into like the spare bedroom that we have.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but this space right now that I'm in, the light outlet doesn't work currently. I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that. But again, like I said, I have this nice, big giant computer screen to light me. So once
there
I get, hopefully by like episode 2 or 3, we'll be back up and running to normal, and I'll actually be well lit.
Yeah. Well, if my ring light has a little USB thing, so I just plug it into my computer.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then. So my room is dark right now, except for this light. Okay. So it looks like, it's excellent. Awesome. It was a good purchase. Thank you, Amazon.
Link down below. No.
This is sponsored by, maybe someday someone should sponsor us.
Yeah,
that'd be cool. I've always wanted to do a reading and, hold up a piece of like a hair product or like talk about Raycon earbuds. All the YouTubers talk about Raycon. That's like the number one sponsor thing. Okay. Anyway, back to the movie. Final thoughts?
Yes, final thoughts. Jerry's final thoughts. Let's do them.
What would you rank this out of 1 to 10?
I'm probably just gonna put it right down the middle and say 5, because like I said, there were some good moments that I enjoyed. I think capacity for storytelling was there. I think they had all the pieces in place to have a great story. I just think they missed the mark on some of it. Is it messed up? Yes, but part of me kind of would have thought that the button would have been placed better on the end if we saw maybe like an OD. Either like right before the concert or right afterward, like if that was the last concert she ever performed.
Yeah. Ooh, that would have been really dark. That would have been like a really awful way to end the film. I feel like possibly they might have used that in earlier versions, but maybe like test audiences were like, this is too sad. We don't like sad.
Which is bizarre because there's a lot of sad movies that get made. Did you watch Cherry with Tom Holland?
No, but I did watch, not Cherry, but The Devil All the Time, the other Tom Holland sad movie that came out recently.
If I would check out Cherry. It's on Apple TV Plus. So if you're not subscribed yet, 1, it's only $5 a month, and you definitely should. 2, I think you can get your first month free or first year free with a new Apple product. But anywho,
thanks for sponsoring us, Apple TV Plus.
If you listen to any episodes of Popflix and Chill, it's literally like I talk about it all the time. It's one of what, in my opinion, the most underrated streaming app out there right now.
Yeah, I think it's the only one that I don't pay for.
Yeah.
Like the only of the big ones.
But there's such good content on there, and such big names. You got like Jennifer Aniston, Steve Carell, Jason Momoa, Tom Hanks, Anthony Mackie, Samuel L. Jackson. Like they're all involved in these different projects. Even Nick Jonas, he's in a new project that just came out.
I mean, Joe is my favorite, but
everybody's
Nick's
either
cool
Nick
too.
Everybody's either Nick or Joe.
Oh yeah, everyone. Who's Kevin? I'm just kidding. Kevin's great.
I'm a guitar player, so I love Kevin.
There you go.
But yeah, the Tom Holland film Cherry, super downer. Like also based on the novel, super downer. I think I was depressed for like 2 days after watching it, but it was still
sick.
Like, it was probably one of the best films I've watched this year so far.
Oh, snap. Okay. I love being depressed. That's like my default emotion.
Default setting.
Just being sad. Okay. Thank you for the rec. I will absolutely have to check it out.
Yeah, definitely should.
For my ranking of Vox Love, I'm going to give it a 6. Okay. I feel like it was very ambitious, and I liked the tone. I liked the feeling, the vibe. I liked that it felt like it was shot in an earlier era. Like it felt the whole time like it was the early 2000s, even when it wasn't. And, I think that, like you said, it had a lot of potential. But yeah, the vignettes weren't quite connected. The editing was a little weird. And the songs, well, we didn't really talk about the music in this film. For a music and film-based podcast, lol. But
yeah, funny.
I think the songs in here were like not super memorable. Like
no, they weren't. And again, I'm gonna hope it was by design.
Yeah.
Because like I said, that the first song I think was the most touching to me. It spoke to me the most. But even at that, I couldn't tell you a lyric from it. And I literally watched it this morning, But I think the rest was designed to be generic pop music that, you know, is just overly produced, overly auto-tuned, and, you know, just is supposed to be so in your face that it's just like, oh yeah, everybody's telling me it's good. It must be good.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for our pilot episode of
Yes.
Acoustic Cinema. I hope people listen to this. That would be dope.
That would be awesome. Yeah. And let everybody, before we go, Haley, know where they can find you.
Me? Oh my gosh. Hi. So you can find me. I'm on Instagram at Hey Madison. That's HayHayMadison, and Instagram at Haley Madison Marks. And I'm also on YouTube at Haley Marks because that's my name. I do vocal covers and also a couple of video essays in the works as well.
Awesome.
So yeah, check me out. Or don't. Do whatever you want.
No, definitely check her out. She's awesome. And I am Andrew. You can find me on Instagram at Swaggity Andy. It's like Raggedy Andy, but with a swag instead.
Love
Swaggity, Swaggity Andy 7, because I had to throw a number on there because Swaggity Andy was taken. And if you are interested in checking out my other streaming-based podcast, that's Podflix and Chill, kind of spelled like Netflix, but with a P-O-D instead of an N-E-T. That's on Instagram and Twitter as well. And make sure you guys definitely head on over to Instagram and check out Loudstone TV. And that's literally at Loudstone TV. They're doing a lot of big things. This podcast is just one of them. They have awesome music videos streaming 24/7 on their beta stream on their website. And they got a bunch of pilot episodes and more music related content in the works.
Thanks so much for listening to this pod. Hope you enjoyed yourself. And next episode, what are we going to talk about? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell us.
Yeah, give us suggestions. Talk to us. DM us on our Instagrams. Maybe we'll respond. Maybe we won't. Maybe you'll get blocked.
No, well, you just said you want to make friends and you're telling people you're going to block them.
I mean, I love making friends, though. I probably won't block you. Like, I'll probably answer you, and I'll probably like ask to get brunch or something.
I like it. I'm about it. I love
Anyway, brunch is great. Thanks so much for listening. I think we should end.
Yes. All right. See you next time on Acoustic Cinema. Bye, guys.
Bye.